When We Disagree is a show about arguments, how we have them, why we have them, and their impact on our relationships and ourselves. How do you argue? When disagreement happens, what strategies and tactics do you typically use? Researchers have been answering these and similar questions for decades. The most influential measure of our conflict styles came from two professors, Kenneth Thomas and Ralph Kilman. The Thomas-Kilman conflict mode instrument identifies 5 conflict styles that vary widely in assertiveness and cooperativeness. 1. The competing style views arguments as zero-sum. You win or you lose. 2. The avoidant style finds conflict distressing and sidesteps arguments. 3. The accommodating style is deferent and wants to appear carefree. 4. The compromising style wants to meet in the middle. 5. The collaborative style wants to understand the other side, both the content of their arguments as well as how they feel. I'm Michael Lee, Professor of Communication and Director of the Civility Initiative at the College of Charleston. Today's guest is Jonny from New Jersey. Jonny, tell us an argument story.
Well, Loyal, thank you for having me. So my argument story is between two of my close friends. It's important, though, this wasn't face-to-face. It was over Xbox, so it was entirely just verbal. And this was between, let's call him Ant. My one friend, Ant, we were on the similar side, and my other friend, we'll say Justin, was on the other. Started as, we were just having fun, talking to each other. But background is important. Me and Justin are very close friends. I think we met maybe 15 years ago. Since then, we've bonded all the time. We have similar interests, like the same games, like the same everything, except we differ heavily on political opinions. So Justin tends to be over to the right a lot more. The specific argument, we were talking about same-sex marriages, same-sex parents. Me and Ant were, originally it was a very normal argument, like a real one. We were thinking of each other's sides, trying to see each other's viewpoints. But eventually, through like many minutes of us talking, jaw-jacking back and forth, the argument somehow got so absurd it came down to this. If you were to raise a child, a baby, a toddler, whatever it be, if that room was blue or pink, would it affect the child's sexuality? Similar to same sex, would having the same sex parents, that was the original argument. Would that alter your childhood? Would it be different? Me and Ann argued heavily, no, it wouldn't change a thing. And then Justin argued, absolutely. It would change things, and then having a pink room would push you towards more feminine values, and having a blue room would point you towards more male values. So me and Ant had a genuine conversation with him. I mean, Justin is one of my close friends, so I don't want to, blast him or anything like that. So it was really, we were trying to get him to understand, that really doesn't make sense. That's kind of your environment growing up. People told you that colors had a gender, what's the word? Some sort of gender connotation towards colors. Whereas me and Ant were like, that's not true at all. And I'd love for you, when you have a kid, raise it in a pink room and see what happens. That's just not how things develop. But he was heavily in that stance. And even then, this was about maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I just remember feeling, I don't know the word. I don't know if it's hopelessness, but I was disappointed in him because we are really close. And although we differ on political differences, like I'm always willing to push those to the sides. Especially recently, we had a deep conversation about his values and things like that. And I try to understand him, whereas I think he's quite the opposite. I think he's set in his ways. And in that argument, I realized some people you just can't convince. If some people believe one thing, like that having a pink room will make you a little bit more feminine, or having same-sex parents will affect your childhood growing up. Some people, if they believe that will affect it, they won't change their mind until maybe they go through a personal experience. Whereas me and Ant were on the other side, where that's just conjecture. It's your environment, how you were raised, and it's important to think outside of that and challenge yourself in different ways.
Wow. So to set the scene, It's sort of 2-on-1.
It is,
in this specific argument. And describe the kind of tenor or tone of the argument. You said it began as, quote, a normal argument, and it sounds like it escalated.
Yeah, so it was real normal. We were just like discussing a normal conversation, but as as it mounted, and me and Ant realized, okay, well, he instead of a conversation, it became a little defensive, where we were like, well, why would you think that pink would would make someone grow up and want to, be feminine? And his response to that was like it wasn't very substantial at all. It would just be, oh, well, pink's a girl color, or things like that. So as that mounted, it turned absurd. It was like, well, what about a yellow room? What would happen if you turned yellow room? Would you be, more likely to be, I don't know, more annoying? It was just funny how, and it turned into like, it got pretty hostile in that. We ended up just going to bed after that. Everybody just got off and we stopped talking about it. We haven't brought it up since. But it was just a very interesting argument. And it was definitely an argument towards the end. First a conversation, and then it shifted as we learned we can't see eye to eye on the situation. Instead of a conversation, it turned into an argument.
Are you playing a game simultaneously?
We were, and then we stopped. I can't remember. It was maybe Call of Duty or something like that. Yeah. We were playing for a little bit, and then the conversation got so... At one point, it was very insightful, and we were discussing things. It was very nice, but as it turned absurd, we stopped playing, and it was just we were trying to get whatever we wanted to say out. And obviously, the 2-on-1 situation didn't help, and Ant, knowing him, he's a very funny arguer. He likes to joke and rag on people, so that probably didn't help.
It's possible that Justin felt ganged up on, perhaps?
Yeah, I would assume so. That might be true, but I mean, I've had similar conversations with him. I mean, again, he is one of my closest friends, so it's hard to have one fundamental thing you disagree on, such as politics. But I try and talk to him all the time and try and get his view. I try and show him mine. A lot of the times, he's not open to see mine, which is fine. I can't force him to.
You mentioned that in many times in these kinds of relationships where there's differences, you push those differences aside and perhaps focus on commonalities. So this is very much an exception in how you see your conflict style.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. I mean, similar to, I'd say it's similar to my parents. They have similar right-leaning values, and I prefer to stay away from it, and we just don't talk about it. I mean, until there's a time where it's super needed to discuss it, I'd rather just think about the things we do like to talk about.
Another thing you said really struck me too, which is that some people you can't convince.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way? You felt that way in this relationship with Justin, it sounds like.
Specifically this instance, I mean, it's tough. I think it goes hand in hand with, again, how you were raised, knowing Justin. And I know he had a tough growing up. He lost his parents when he was very young, recently lost his dad a couple years ago. So a lot of his role models, his guardians, are gone, and he's kind of left to his own devices, the leadership guidance he seeks out, whether that be the podcasters he listens to or the influencers he takes as gospel. I mean, that's up to him. And also, I mean, he is, after he graduated high school, he isn't the most ambitious person. I mean, similar to me, I'm not very ambitious. I don't have dreams of changing the world or anything like that. But in saying that, I think he's kind of in his own bubble. That's what we've discussed before. I tell him, I'm like, when you're in your own bubble, you tend to distort things, like confirmation bias. You tend to think things are true when they're not. Whereas on the outside, I'm more than open to admit, whether it be problems with left-leaning policies or, hypocritical behaviors I have. I'm fine with admitting them. But I think being in a bubble really makes you set in your ways.
Mm-hmm. And talk through how it makes you feel to be in a relationship with somebody who you think is unpersuadable on specific issues. Does it make you feel defeated, or like there's these landmines that you have to avoid, or what? Landmines
is a good way to describe it. It seems like the best way to go about it, specifically in this situation, is to him have an experience that proves that it's not right. In a similar light, his girlfriend has a transgender brother who is now a woman, and he finds that very hard to believe. So in that moment, I try and talk to him. He describes the situation to me. He's like, well, she's a boy, but she's a girl. Okay, I'm not sure. He's like, well, what does she say she is? She says she's a girl. Well, I guess she's a girl. That's all it is. And so he just has trouble looking past things that he thinks are true, such as, whether that be the colors thing or his thoughts on gender. If those are true, it's very tough to push him away. And it's also tough, how much evidence can you give to those things that are entirely subjective, like the colors? Can you go through a study to decide if colors really dictate, feminine and masculine personalities?
The whole culture seems to be sort of wrestling with how you bring people out from bubbles.
Yeah.
How do we safely encounter folks who are different? How do folks that we encounter who are different change our worldview, or do we let them change our worldview? And then when you're in a relationship with somebody who you perceive to be moving further and further into their own echo chamber, what kinds of persuasive tactics can you employ? And I don't want you to solve our cultural problems, but just speaking for your relationship with this one human being, what do you think is any way forward if you feel like somebody can't be convinced?
One way I do it is I try and point out to him common instances where his thinking is directly, challenged. For instance, I don't want to say he's homophobic or by any means. Years ago when he was younger, he was for sure that way. He's gotten a lot lighter. For instance, me and him, we like wrestling. We watch professional wrestling a lot, and that is inherently pretty, it's guys in tights, sweaty, they're wrestling. It's melodramatic. It's soap opera. In every sense of the word, it's, it's not the most manly thing to watch. So when we watch together, sometimes I point out, it's like, this is a little questionable as well. The things we watch, and similar into a lot of the games he plays. There's a lot of left-leaning things like that. A lot of what instances one game has, a prompt that says, make sure to put your storage in his or her house. And I know that bothered him. He said, no, why do we have pronouns in our games? It was like, well, pronouns are a grammatical thing. They work in English. It's a thing. It's an English language thing, not a political thing. So in those instances, I try and point it out to him. And sometimes you can kind of see the gears turning, and he's like, oh, okay, yeah, that is true. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But again, it's tough to have someone to challenge and, either call themselves wrong or think about their own, challenge their thinking.
You challenge his thinking, and just as important, honestly, it sounds like you stay in relationship. You don't cut him out. You don't avoid him.
Yeah, it's tough
continue
because
to be there.
Yeah, he since he lives in New Jersey, where I used to live, I moved away about 3 years ago. I don't keep many close ties with people that are there, and you could argue there's people there that I should keep closer ties that aren't just and that do align with my political values. But it's we've known each other for a long time. I know his family, knows my family. And for me I have thought about it before. Maybe I should, in the height of the election, probably coming up here soon, we'll be getting into some conversations. There's times where I thought, God, maybe I just want to let this go and just, But at the end of the day, I just think I value our friendship more and the memories we have to just throw it away over, questionable things. There is a line I'll definitely draw, when it comes to human rights things. We've already gotten there before where he discussed why do people get so upset about politics? And I brought up this class. I brought up our communication class about how important debating is and evidence and being right with evidence. And I discussed with him, I said, political issues, it's hard for us just to disagree because political issues are more turning into human rights issues. So it's two very different things where you could agree, yes, you can agree chocolate is better than vanilla ice cream, but you can't agree that, some people shouldn't have rights compared to others. And in that situation, I think I am opening his eyes very slowly, but I think it's going to take a while. That's for sure. I guess a lot of experiences, a lot of talking to other people and getting out of that bubble, more importantly, out of that New Jersey bubble, I'm sure is very important for him.
Jonny, thank you very much for being on When We Disagree.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
When We Disagree is recorded at the College of Charleston with creator and host Michael Lee. Recording and sound engineering by Jesse Kunz and Lance Laidlaw. Reach out to us at whenwedisagree@gmail.com.